You are now tuned into Flipping the Birds, a Philly Sports Network podcast.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of Flipping the Birds.
Touchdown! A.J. Brown! That's beautiful. And intercepted by the Eagles. He is hit. They got him again! They got him back at the 26. He's into the end zone. Touchdown, Eagles!
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome all to another episode of Flipping the Birds. I'm Brian Cameron, alongside Zach Chavalella. We will be joined shortly by Morgan Burkett to talk about everything birds and speak of the devil himself. What's going on, gentlemen? How are we feeling?
Doing well, man. It was just up to devilish activity all evening, so appreciate you guys having me on and looking past all that crazy shit.
Is Halloween a thing up for you guys up there?
Yeah.
I feel like every holiday I ask you if it's a thing up there.
Yeah, no, we have all the same holidays. The only one.
Do you celebrate Halloween in like September or some weird time like you do Thanksgiving, or like how does that work? Like, is it a month early like you do Thanksgiving?
No, it's just Thanksgiving. I don't really understand. I guess we. Without getting into it, I think that we just slaughtered our natives at a different time than you guys did.
It's just a different day on the calendar. Yeah, I get it.
The sad truth of that holiday.
Oh my god!
Woo! Starting off hot. All right.
I apologize, guys, but let's recognize the history. It's important. So
it is.
Speaking of slaughtering, the Eagles slaughtered some Bengals over the weekend, 37-17 to the surprise of many of us.
Natives of Cincinnati.
It's not funny. This is not funny.
It's not.
It's not. However, the Eagles' victory was pretty funny at a certain point.
It was. And we'll dive into the weeds of it, right? But I don't know, like, how impressed were you guys? I know the Bengals haven't been the Bengals this year, right? But one way or another, like, that's a team that can turn up at any point. How impressive was this win for this Eagles team that beat too low? Browns defense is not nothing to frown upon, right? Giants defense was ranked in the top 10 when they faced them. How impressive was this win against the Bengals?
I think like just applying the context to it, where last week we had talked about maybe this is a turning point. Well, now it's 2 weeks in a row where we've seen both sides of the ball really play a complete game of football. Obviously, first quarter woes, still an issue, but just the way that the game went, they scored, early into the second half. It just, they didn't get the ball until, late in the first. So I feel like this game, they started off a little hotter, obviously still didn't score in the first quarter. On paper, they didn't get off to as hot of a start, but I still think I saw improvement in that regard. So all around, was nice to see them put another game in a row where they kind of completed all aspects of the game.
Yeah, I think it's that kind of total completion, like Morgan alluded to, where like it was kind of every aspect of the game. That's the most encouraging thing. I think that there is some bit of, walking back isn't the right term, but there were a lot of people ahead of the game who were a little bit afraid, or even not afraid, but would not have been surprised if Philadelphia had lost that game outright, right? Who are now trying to kind of walk it back and say, well, it's just the Cincinnati Bengals, who have they really beat? They're struggling. They beat the Browns. They beat the Giants. Like, it doesn't mean anything. Kind of like what people have said about the Eagles. But, when you look at this game and you look at the players who are still on Cincinnati, like, it's still an impressive roster. I would say that they have an intriguing running back committee. On top of that, they have obviously Joe Burrow, one of the most accurate quarterbacks of this most recent generation. You have a guy like Jamar Chase out there, Mike Gesicki, who the Eagles made look like freaking Tony Gonzalez at points during the game. And then defensively, there's guys who contribute as well. So, all that just to say, like, just because the Eagles won, we can't walk it back and say, well, it was just the Bengals, because heading into it, it was, well, this is the Bengals. So they may not lose, or they may not win. Rather, this may end up a loss for Philadelphia, especially on the road. So to see not only that victory against a team that, while struggling this year, does have those talented playmakers to do it on the road, to do something Philadelphia's never done, which is to win in Cincinnati. I think that there's a lot of pluses that you have to come out with after that game.
And I completely agree with that. I mean, it's again like I'm glad of the fact that I'm eating crow right now, right? Because I was on the fact that Sirianni was as stubborn as can be and was never going to get out of his ways, which we'll dig into that a little bit later. But all around, it's like this team. There's an aura around this team right now where there's a no tolerance aura. And I heard Brandon Graham on WIP this morning. It was kind of like, you know, the thought process in the locker room right now is earmuffs, move along and do your thing. And you saw that they handled their business one by one with the Bengals. I mean, they didn't let that first drive by the Bengals deter them at any point. Jamar Chase was held in check. Cooper DeJean's nasty, man. That kid, he can fly, man. Quinion Mitchell showing up, but then most impressively, like, sorry for my dog in the background. Jalen Hurts, like we're seeing a quick decisions made from Jalen Hurts. We're seeing, you know, confidence. We're seeing comfortability in the pocket. Like this without his main left tackle. Like this is probably one of the more impressive wins of the year. And obviously we have a whole season left to go. But it just made a lot of sense that this team is actually finding their foot. And this reminded me a lot of the matchup against the Broncos in 2017 when the Broncos came in and they just blew them out of the water. I think it was like 52 to 17 or 52 to 20 something. But it seems like the Eagles are going in the right direction now, 3 weeks in a row.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing that was most impressive to me, and you kind of alluded to it, is, you know, those times that Jalen Hurts wasn't getting the ball out early, man, that the pocket composure was something that, you know, across his career, it's been held against him. So for him to do that in a game where, you know, again, everything was clicking is great. But like you said, there's injuries across that offensive line. It's not just that they're missing the left tackle, right? Like Jordan Mailata is a huge piece of that. Don't get me wrong, but this O-line's been shuffling every year, and for him to just kind of, you know, seemingly decide he was going to feel comfortable in the pocket all of a sudden, that's a huge step. And I think it's going to go overlooked. But the couple of times he did have to extend plays or wait for those longer reads to develop, he looked good in there, man. Whether it was just sliding to his left, something that apparently, and you know, you talk to all the NFL experts, like Jalen Hurts doesn't like to do. You want to push him to his left and make him slide that way, or you want to force him out of the pocket, right, and collapse the pocket from the inside so you can get him on the run, because, you know, if he's rolling certain ways, he doesn't like to throw that. Like, it's all the things on paper that Jalen Hurts doesn't like to do. He did well in this past game. He threw over the middle well. You know, he hit his checkdowns when he needed to, et cetera, et cetera. It was just one of those complete games where you kind of reminded it just how special he can be when he does those things. Because on top of that, he still had some of those incredible runs where he's just making something out of nothing. He had, you know, that long pass to Devontae Smith where we get reminded how good his deep ball is. And so it just all around really, really good performance from Jalen Hurts, but really impressed by his composure and just clearly working on those things with Kellen Moore that have been held against him for the past couple of years.
One thing I want to allude to, the big adjustment, right? The big move that they made going into this game, we saw play action. Like, we actually saw that happen on the field, and Jalen went to his first read, whether it's a tight end, whether it's Devontae Smith. And I don't know about you guys, and I'm not trying to be as biased as I can be, but like, it was that impressive of a game for me. But Jalen Hurts, when he launches a deep ball, I feel like there's nothing prettier in the world. Like the accuracy, the pinpoint passing when it comes to, you know, putting in the breadbasket. We saw a different offense where they were run first and then pass next. And it worked so well. I mean, when your quarterback goes 16 for 20, your running back goes 22 attempts for 100 yards without a touchdown, granted, but still, like, you have difference makers in this team. And it seems like Sirianni is finally grasping that, where it's kind of like, you know, hey, like, I'm finally going to just be the CEO coach and let you guys do what you got to do. And I will, you know, I'll maneuver everything else. Even the way he's handling himself in the media. I do want to point out, though, Chris Long did a little bit of research on his podcast, and I the numbers escape me, so forgive me about that. But he did compare apples to apples, right? When the Eagles started bad back in when Sirianni's first couple games, the first drives was mostly passing. I think the ratio was like 67% to like 33% or something like that. after Shane Steichen took the reins, the run game jumped up to almost like 45% or something of that sort. So it's kind of like we're seeing, like, hey, Sirianni's actually giving the leash, to Kellen Moore to just go full throttle with it. And I feel like we're going to start seeing this offense actually cook up something special.
Yeah, just kind of on that point, talking about Chris Long, it was 33-67 it was this year, whereas in the past it was 48-52. So obviously, like that's a huge difference. So for Philadelphia to be making those adjustments and
that's the run pass ratio, right?
Yeah, that's the run pass ratio. I get it. We don't want to give Sirianni credit for doing obvious things or things that we have stated.
I'm giving him credit. What else do you want?
No. I'm talking about you. I'm talking about the general public. I'm talking about Philadelphia.
Okay.
And the we extends as well. The we goes beyond the media. The average fan has said these things as well. And that kind of speaks to how obvious the idea of switching it up in that degree has been, right? So I get that you kind of want to not give credit at that point. But, there is credit that has to be given for the humility to go off your plan, off your path, especially as an NFL head coach, a guy who's been to the Super Bowl, right? So I think there is credit that should be given to Sirianni, to Kellen Moore, and to Jalen Hurts for playing in that style as well. There's been a lot of speculation, and I'm leaving it as that speculation in terms of Hurts throwing over the middle, in terms of him playing under center and his level of comfortability in those situations. He looked pretty damn comfortable last Sunday, right? And obviously, winning cures everything. So that certainly helps him feel more comfortable is the clear victory that they had in that second half. But you still have to give credit to him in addition to the coaching staff there. And the fruits of the labor are already paying off, right? You did mention that Saquon Barkley did not have a touchdown in this game. If he played for any of the 31 other teams in the league, we all know that he would have at least one touchdown. It's purely
they're doing him wrong, man.
Listen, here's my take on that, right? In many other cases, I think you'd have a point. Saquon already got paid. If this was a dude on a contract year, if this was a Kenny G situation, not that they really care about Kenny G in that same capacity, but if you're talking about a dude who's expiring, that's one thing. But for a guy who is freshly paid, that's perfectly fine. Just when that
I think
contract
you don't complain about it when he was asking for it in the Giants game, when he was like, line up, guys, let's do it again, line up. Like,
yeah.
I've never seen a team first guy like Saquon Barkley in my life. I'm not gonna lie. Like, that's freaking admirable. I'm not gonna lie.
I'll be honest with you. There seems to be quite a few of them, and the media and fans have kind of trashed AJ Brown at certain points throughout. I would say his brief tenure, even though he's also received heaps of praise. But you talk about a guy who is also extremely team first. Let's talk about AJ Brown and Devontae Smith and how willing they've been to effectively split number ones. Like, and we get it. AJ's the true number one on this team in part due to his relationship with Jalen Hurts. But these are both guys who would receive more targets and more glory, frankly, playing on another team where they don't have to compete with each other for not necessarily snaps, but for receptions, for touchdowns. And Devontae, I think, is an even better example of that. Granted, he is the younger, less proven guy compared to AJ Brown, but I mean, even still, to be willing to do that and to be willing to be patient and to work out that relationship with the team to the point that he wanted to extend early and extend at a discount, that really speaks volumes to the character of this team, especially on an offense. And here's one thing that I think a lot of people aren't going to want to hear. Sirianni is a great representation of that, in fact. So, you can say what you want about the guy and call him what you will, but I think you have to acknowledge that, he's part of the reason that culture has been cultivated the way that it has in Philadelphia.
Before Eric comes in, because Eric just joined the show, before he goes on his tear, I gotta applaud the fact that Sirianni has been, and I don't want to say behaving. Sirianni has turned a new leaf with the media, because if you guys listen to WIP this morning, like, he used this one-word answer and everything, like, pretty much not giving the media anything. Oh God, I activated Siri over here.
That's a pro and a con situationally, by the way, because another Philly recently taken a similar approach, and it is not a positive. But go on.
Eric, how you feeling, man?
I'm feeling fine. I got a few more minutes, over here before we got hop back into the second period of the Flyers.
This is hatless Eric, by the way. This is hatless Eric.
Hatless.
Is that not a hat? Is that? Oh,
This is
sorry.
just- No, this is a wig. You're right. I look just like Brian. No, I don't know, and I hate to be the guy. I didn't really hear the first 15 minutes. So can you guys fill me in just real quick what the topic is?
How impressive was the win over the Bengals, and how impressed are you to see the growth of the offense? Right, I explained that offensively, like they ran play action, like everything was quick, quick decisions. Everything was Jalen just looked so comfortable in the pocket, and he was just maneuvering in a way where it's kind of like he's back to MVP kind of form.
Yeah, I do think this game against the Bengals. Now, I expected the offense to kind of look comfortable, and they did. Rushing the ball. Obviously, Zach mentioned earlier that Saquon should have absolutely had touchdowns, and it is what it is. You probably, if you have Saquon on your fantasy team, you're pissed off. But if you don't,
Brian.
I lost by 1 freaking point. All I need
Oh,
was
is that
one
the reason?
touchdown.
Is that
Bro,
the
you
reason
lost.
why-
You lost that game.
I lost by 1 point.
That's unbelievable. You were
And then I ended up
you
trading for
fumbled
Kamara.
that, man.
And I ended
You
up
fumbled that.
trading Kamara with him.
All right. I mean, I feel bad. I won by 50. What I will what I will say here is the offense looks comfortable. The offense looks like it complements itself. It doesn't need to be a run first. And I don't know that this was a run first. 16 for 20, and what 200 and like 30, 50 yards ish through the air.
236.
Okay. That on paper with one touchdown maybe doesn't look, incredible for a passing attack, but it is. It absolutely is, because you see the new wrinkles of this offense and how it's being implemented. Word is that Hurts actually went, whoever it was, to Sirianni, to more, maybe even both collectively, and wanted to work a little bit more under center. You're starting to see that he's comfortable in different situations pre-snap, and I thought it showed. But and I know that I'm not going to be here for the defensive side of things, but if I could just jump into that real quick, Cooper, Quinion, Nakobe, and Bond. Holy hell, dude! Like, so I was the first person to give Dean a lot of smoke before the season started, because it was like, is he going to be the guy that steps up? I think a lot of Devin White being here was kind of saying, hey, if you're not ready to go, we're going to put Devin White in. He never saw the light of day. And the fact of the matter is, we're talking about, a linebacking group that had a lot of questions, more questions than answers. And now all of a sudden they're probably amongst one of the better tandems in the league. So, yeah, I think this game, a lot of media will sit there and say, the first thing you hear after an Eagles win, especially recently, even the Giants game, are the Eagles back? Well, after that Giants game, I feel like everybody was back, because the Giants aren't beating many people. The Bengals are a better team. I don't let the record they have fool you. I do believe that the Eagles are getting back. I don't think they're back yet. I would still like to see how they perform against teams like, the Baltimore Ravens, which are still further on a schedule.
I feel like we need to talk about something before you leave, because Zach has provoked me in our fantasy football chat.
Oh no, here we go.
I feel like we need to have we need to put out an obituary for Zach's team that is for some reason labeled as better than Brian.
We gotta
You really emphasized the bitch in that word, by the way. You think I didn't hear that? I did.
I'm just gonna say this, he won. It took 8 weeks or whatever, or 9, but he won.
I did, and honestly, I did beat the person I wanted to beat the most. So I feel pretty good about that.
That's his Super Bowl.
It kind of was. It kind of was, really.
Morgan, to bring you up to speed, Morgan, Zach has traded for everybody in the world in this league. Zach is the guy that, this dog is really active today. Zach is the guy he's Howie Roseman of our league, and he's been consistent with it. But he was 0-7 going into this week.
Tough.
And his team name is better than Brian.
I'm
in short, he has not been better than Brian.
Sorry, my wife's trying to burn down the house while this is all happening. Yeah, so
she's trying to give you a hint about your fantasy team.
regardless, and if you look at my situation, what I've dealt with, what I've had to suffer through this season. First of all, the 49ers incorrectly reporting the injury on Christian McCaffrey heading into the season. That's something the Philadelphia 76ers were just fined $100,000 for. Where's that investigation? You tell me that, Roger Goodell. On top of that, right, we have multiple injury situations, the most current being Stephon Diggs.
I ran out of IR spots.
It's been tough, man. I've been out of IR spots. I had TJ Hawkinson. I had everybody on IR. I had the whole team on IR, right? Very, very tough. You look at the scores of everybody week to week, consistently having their best offensive game against my squad. Inexplicable. Can't play defense in fantasy football. That's the biggest struggle that I had this year. However, what I will say is we are playing a keeper league, and through all of my many, many trades, I have a lot of immensely talented guys who I can ship off for draft picks for next year. Talking about guys like Christian McCaffrey, talking about guys like Cooper Kupp, Brock Purdy, who's still one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. Talking about guys additionally like Rashad White, Ramondre Stevenson.
I like the way you said NFL right there. Say it again.
Kenneth Walker, right? Some of the top guys available. And I even made a list just last night. I was musing on it
twice.
I made a list of my top keepers heading into next year, and I feel pretty damn comfortable. I'm not going to lie. So, trade deadline is not this upcoming Tuesday as it is for the NFL. It's actually, I believe, 10 days after, right about there. So, whether or not I'm able to come back from 0-7, which I'd say still remains a possibility. All you got to do is make it to the dance, and then from there on out. Listen, it's a 12-team league, and there's 8 playoff spots, right? I'm just saying it's possible. Brian's clearly pissing away his lead over me in this league, so there's still a possibility.
It was one loss at one point. Relax.
You lost to Alec, who benched Alvin Kamara, right?
I'm going to put it this way.
Did you see how off his other guys were? I mean, the guy's team is loaded. I don't know how he has a bad team. Yes,
your team is Brown. Honestly shit. Like if you look at yours, like you're relying on Tank Dell, man.
Listen,
I'm going to say one thing about the fantasy before I head out of here because I got like 1 minute, maybe 30 seconds left. I started 0-3. I had a little bit of injuries going on too. I had not had the struggle that Zach has, but in the last like 4 games where it's been fun. It's just been fun. So I'm looking forward to going from like 10th to 1st in this league. I still want to know, Zach, is there payout for second place I should have never had in fantasy baseball? Because I shit canned myself into that, and I think I should be paid for it.
Well, first of all, you have been paid for it. Check your Venmo
was I really?
You were absolutely paid for it. And you bring up a great point about how you can enter the playoffs with a minus 500 record, as Eric Reese did.
I did
in fantasy baseball.
And I was in the championship and lost by like 300
points. That was our most recent fantasy tournament, so the possibility remains.
I think the biggest question in this whole conversation, go ahead, Eric, what do you think, is how the hell is Morgan not in our fantasy league?
Well,
I don't know that we invited him.
That's a good question. I didn't have the time. If we're airing fantasy grievances, man, 2 weeks ago, they stat corrected Zach Charbonnet.
That was actually last week, I think, right? Wasn't it?
A 0.5. I lost by 0.3 that game. So I left that weekend winning, and I checked my fantasy 2 days later, and it was a loss. So that's how fantasy's been going for me this year. So that whole conversation was hard for me to listen. People having fun doing fantasy football, I can't imagine. I don't know. What, can you hear him, Zach?
On mute.
I couldn't, and I
pressed mute.
On mute.
And I was actually complimenting Zach. I was saying actually that Zach is the anchor of our league. He should be the Jerry West emblem of our league, just because the guy's in every single trade that happens in the league.
And I win every single year as well. Let's not forget, I'm fucking.
Whoa, you won one league, one year.
I won baseball and football the last 2 times.
Baseball doesn't count. This is football. We're talking about this is the Eagles. This is the Eagles conversation. Okay. We're not talking about Phillies.
You just mad you missed the playoffs in baseball? Is that what this is?
They lost to the Mets, bro. That's all.
And what happened to the Mets? What happened thereafter? You tell me what happened.
We beat the Phillies.
Did you? Well, but what happened after that? What was the next? What's the next?
We
chapter?
did better than the Yankees are doing against the Dodgers.
How many players are free agents this year? So you think you're coming back next year? I don't know about that.
Anyways, yes. Let's move on.
Let's not even talk Eagles for that. I mean, we kind of wrapped that up. Yeah, they had a great game.
They did good.
Moving on.
We didn't
Let's
talk
talk
about the
fantasy
defense, though.
sports.
That's
Let's talk
like Morgan's
baseball.
favorite topic. You cannot
Let's
talk
talk the
about defense.
Philadelphia 76ers just
No,
leading
we're not
us
doing
along
that.
about Joel Embiid. Let's talk about all that. Why
Let's
don't we
go
get into
Raptors.
that? It's good
Let's go
podcast.
Raptors.
That's anxiety. That's just pure anxiety. Whatever the hell's going on with the Sixers team right now, I'm staying away from it. Eagles though, defensively, I'm pretty sure we're all impressed by Cooper DeJean, Quinton Mitchell, Zach Bond, like Eric I mentioned, right? But I feel like a big saving grace in this game that's gone unmentioned was that 3rd-and-1 play by Brandon Graham, just showing the veteran style of play, like knowing where the ball was going, knowing who had the ball. I mean, that was the huge stop, which led to the infamous Cooper DeJean behind the line of scrimmage stop. Like this defense, it seems like Vic Fangio kind of backed off of his, which what you said last week, where it's kind of like he's getting creative and he's actually, incorporating blitzes, things different from his actual scheme. But not only that, we're seeing actually a rotation with the defensive line. I mean, Jordan Davis has taken a hell of a back seat, and we're seeing guys actually shine because of it. How do you guys feel this defense is going in the direction that we're currently moving in?
Yeah, I mean, great direction, right? I think getting Nakobe Dean activated, using those blitzes, and again, it's no secret, right, that he's been playing really well. But I also think that it's no coincidence, right? You get a guy downhill, he gets to hit the quarterback a couple of times. You're just locked in. He's flying around out there. He's doing a good job. But again, different than what we've seen from Vic Fangio in years past. Not that he's not capable of it, but definitely, some different looks. It's great development. And you talked about all the guys that are shining through. Like, I think one of the guys that's kind of flown under the radar that's really improved his play is C.J. Gardner-Johnson. He looked like an almost liability. Starting the season, he looked like he was going to be a problem for this defense. He looked like
he still looked a little slow. I'm not gonna lie, because that Cooper DeJean play, like he looked like he was jogging.
Yeah, he's not the same guy that he was on the Eagles, a couple years ago. But still, like he's improved his play and just all around, right? You talk about that veteran leadership. Like, it just feels like everyone's kind of stepping up and it's being led by those veterans. And so, I mean, defensively, it just seems like a team that finally was playing complementary football. Their defense was able to do what they should be doing and are capable of doing now that the offense is finally putting drives together, right? And you can't separate the two. It really does matter. The performance you get from your offense, your defense gets a bit of a breather. You talk about getting into that rotation a bit more. Well, that's only really viable when you're just not exhausted. Right now, you're getting fresh legs. Now it makes sense. Now it works. Whereas if you're getting to rotation, everyone's exhausted, it doesn't really matter, right? So it is part of that complementary football. But credit to Vic Fangio, man. He's you talked about Joe Burrow being one of the most accurate quarterbacks. I mean, currently the most accurate quarterback in the history of the NFL. I'm not sure if that changed after the Eagles game, but he's a hard man to confuse with coverages, and they're throwing the kitchen sink at him, and the blitzes. Vic Fangio still, even with a blitz, is usually sending 4. Right? Just where it's coming from, you're never sure. So, man, he's in his bag, and obviously, it's a different monster come playoffs. Who knows what's coming next? But right now, they're definitely hitting their stride, and it looks good all around, man.
All right, so I did check up on that. You mentioned whether or not Burrow is still most accurate quarterback of all time. He is, by the way, 68.3%. And then I went down a little rabbit hole and I looked at the top 10, even cheating into 11. This list, I just got to go over this real quick because this just shocked me to my core, these names. So number 1, Joe Burrow, makes sense. Number 2, Drew Brees, makes sense. Here's where it starts to get a little weird. Number 3, Jimmy Garoppolo. Number 4, Kirk Cousins, tied with Tua Tagovailoa. Number 6, Dak Prescott. 7, Kyler Murray. 8, Patrick Mahomes, makes sense. 9, Justin Herbert, makes sense. 10, Teddy Bridgewater. And 11, Deshaun Watson. Listen,
that's
you could
the most
put as much money up as you want.
Heard.
I never would have gotten that. I never would have guessed that list.
That's a very, very interesting group of quarterbacks.
That's shocking. That's a trivia night question for sure. But heading back to the original point around the defense, Morgan, I'm glad that you brought up the importance of the offense getting right to support the defense, because there is no way that you can look at one situation and not the other. Like you have to be able to understand that while there's certain things that you have to address on one side than the other, the impact that they have on each other is constant. I mean, if your quarterback's throwing interceptions or turning the ball over every time he's out on the field, the defense is going to be playing more. Guys are going to be more gassed. That's obvious. If the team's not sustaining drives, the defense plays more. Conversely, if the defense is consistently giving up huge plays and consistently giving up, touchdowns play after play after play, yeah, your offense is going to head back out there. Yes, they're going to be more exhausted. Yes, they're going to have less time to be able to analyze what went right, what went wrong on previous series, and there's such a lasting effect on both sides that you kind of get into your own way by not having at least an average level performance in each area. You can have a team that has an average offense and an average defense that performs better than a team with a strong offense or defense and a weak opposite, right? That's just how the league can work, because football's funny that way. And you have to be able to rest your guys first and foremost, especially when you look at this defense and you look at how they like to work the rotations on the D line. Like, that's going to be huge for guys like Bryce Huff. That's going to be huge for guys who are up there in years like Brandon Graham, right? That's going to be huge for guys who frankly are a little bit bigger, like Jordan Davis, right? There's a lot of different ways that's going to impact this team, especially on that defensive line. So by keeping these drives sustained offensively and being able to rest your guys defensively, you're going to be seeing an increased pass rush, right? You're going to be seeing increased performance defensively. Ideally, you're going to be seeing increased tackling, because you have guys who, they're only putting themselves in a better position to make those tackles. But on top of that, they have more energy to actually be able to take the guy down, right? So we've seen increased performance, I would say, across the board for Philadelphia defensively in these past few weeks. And I get it. It's been the Browns, it's been the Giants, it's been the Bengals without T. Higgins. But there's only so long that you can continue to say that before you start saying that they actually are making the proper differences in their game. And when you look at the Browns game, when you look at the Giants game, you look at the Bengals game, one more consistent fact in all those games is that it was a dominant effort by Philadelphia, right?
Can we agree that they're winning the games that they are supposed to win? Like, that was an issue last year. They're winning the games that they're supposed to win this year. Like, this is what you expected of them.
But not only that, but they're doing what they're supposed to do in those games as well. They did not give up a touchdown, an offensive touchdown, I should say, to Cleveland or to New York, right? They held Cincinnati in check offensively, right? So, you look at these wins, and it's not just that they are beating these teams that they're supposed to beat, but they're beating them the way that they're supposed to beat them. And they're improving in each of those outings as well. When I would argue that the difficulty of the opponent has also increased in each of those games. So, for me, like, listen, I'm not here to say that they're the favorite in the NFC. That's obviously the Detroit Lions right now. But what I am here to say is that this team is consistently getting better and better and better mid-season, and that makes them a dangerous team moving forward.
One of the developments on the defensive side of the ball that we haven't talked about as much too, which is awesome, and it puts you in a great situation, is Vic Fangio's willingness to play man with these young DBs. If you're in a situation where you're a primary zone defense and all of a sudden, you get Cooper DeJean, who just got added to the lineup, and you talk about that fourth down play. Well, what are they in? Right? He's man-to-man on Jamar Chase. You're talking as a defensive coordinator, you got young guys, and obviously 4th and 1, different situation. You kind of have to play man there in that situation. But what you're risking is a one-on-one situation with Cooper DeJean. The Bengals know that. Why do you think they're drawing up that play? Why do you think they're setting Jamar Chase in motion? They're doing some some back alley shit where he's juking behind the running back. They're doing that because they know he's in man coverage with Cooper DeJean, and they like that matchup. And who won that matchup? Cooper DeJean, right? And how many times we've seen Quinyon Mitchell in man coverage? He's winning that matchup. Like, if you're talking about a historically preferential zone defense, right? And now you're able to give zone looks and play man out of that. It gets so complicated. You're talking about quick reads and all that stuff. One of the things that thwarts this defense, right, is the quick ball out. One of the things that the Eagles have had such trouble with over the last couple of years is ball out quick. If all of a sudden you think you're getting a zone look and now you're in man, that quick throw now is much more complicated, right? That's where, again, we haven't quite seen it yet, but it's coming. Those interceptions, those tip balls, that's going to start happening, right? And man, Quinyon, he's been so close a couple of times. Even DeJean, man, close a couple of times, right? They're going to start happening, and it's going to be a product of being able to switch that coverages. And with such a young secondary in a lot of positions, that's such a good development, especially going forward.
And the key thing about the secondary as well is, like, it's weird, right? We had a deep secondary last year, but it wasn't as talented as this secondary. where you're seeing a guy like Isaiah Rodgers could come in and spell Darius Slay and still be effective. Like the guy's a veteran and making veteran moves where he did that tip drill to CJGJ. But you're seeing an aggressive secondary. Like these guys are not getting bullied like in years past. This isn't Ronald Darby. This isn't Patrick, Robinson. This is a new age of secondaries that the Eagles have. And they're a really no nonsense kind of group. And I love that about them. Safeties, CJ, I feel like has lost a step. I would prefer if once Sidney Brown is fully ramped up, if he starts to get more acclimated into that starter role. Avonte Maddox is, he's not what he used to be. We saw, like Zach had mentioned it earlier in the podcast, Mike Gesicki, looked like Tony Gonzalez, but in those moments, it was actually Avonte Maddox covering him. So, as they progress, as they grow within the season, like I'm looking forward to this no-fly zone that's developing. Like these guys are not only are they damn near, elite, but like they're bullies in their own term, and it's friggin' it's a sight for sore eyes. I feel like we haven't seen this kind of secondary in God knows how long in Philadelphia. So kind of recapping, we had a lot of praise for the team, right? Offensively, defensively. There is, obviously we'll kind of preview the game against the Jaguars on Sunday on our Saturday show. But to end this show, I feel like we do have to acknowledge the fact that next week is the trade deadline. The Eagles are in a weird position. Offensively, they don't need a thing. That unit is as polished as can be. But defensively, they could use a pass rusher. It doesn't have to be a main guy. Like, I know Jay Fizz had a question in the chat earlier on where he asked, do we think they need to throw some major picks to get a Max Crosby or Myles Garrett, or do you think they should bank on Huff progressing? Bryce Huff has been actually efficient in his part-time role here. But I feel like they still need somebody to rotate with a Josh Sweat and a Bryce Huff. It can't be all on Brandon Graham. Although Nolan Smith is progressing, I feel like they still need that piece. Is there any defender out there that you feel like can actually come in and be a rotational piece that's not going to cost high draft capital?
So I don't know if there's anyone that stands out in particular for me, but and obviously, I don't do my research the way Howie Roseman does his research, but for me, it's a matter of what are you giving up, and it just feels like the Eagles, they're one injury away from really needing some of their depth pieces, and that's where they've kind of been able to find value in the past. That and draft picks. The one thing I will say about draft picks, we've seen some trades, unfortunately, to the Kansas City Chiefs. Kind of go for pennies on the dollar in terms of draft picks. I don't know what the valuation of a draft pick is these days, but it seems like the value's gone way down. I don't know what's changed. So if the Eagles are able to steal someone for a mid-round pick, I mean, you do it, right? You're talking about Max Crosby and Myles Garrett. I feel like the Raiders and the Browns would have to be crazy to give up those guys for mid-round pick, but I would have thought the same about, Hopkins as well. I would have thought the same about, I like Josh Uch as well. Like, I feel like those are both great pickups that were seemingly cheap, so you never know. But as soon as you get into starting trading the depth pieces, the way the offensive line has been banged up, the way that the depth at receiver is, like, you can't really get rid of any of those guys. The Eagles have just struggled when you start to get rid of those pieces. On the defense, you can't really afford to lose anyone. So as much as you'd like to see that, I think that would take this defense over the top. I think you kind of have to trust that Bryce Huff is just finding his rhythm and he's about to cause him havoc.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't feel comfortable fully relying on the tools that the team has at this moment, right? So you look at the offensive lines of the past three teams that they played, and I know that I've just spent the past 40 minutes just saying how impressive these wins were. You do have to acknowledge that they've played three very unimpressive offensive lines in a row. I think that is a factor when you're talking about making an addition ahead of the deadline, right? Because you can't go back retroactively and try and pick up one of these guys after the fact. So ideally, I think what Philadelphia does is that they kind of work the margins and they find somebody in between. I think everyone would love a Josh Hines-Allen. I think everyone would love a Zadarius Smith. I just don't think those guys are necessarily realistic. And I don't know that financially it's in the team's best interest as well. The other important thing with both of those guys is if either of them were a pending free agent, I would buy it a little bit more just because you can then kind of work the comp pick angle a little bit more. But both of those guys are locked up at least for the following year. So that's another reason why. Like, they're obviously good candidates from a performance perspective, but I don't really buy those big names there. So when you talk about other guys, I think a Jonathan Cooper out of Denver makes sense. They're over 500, but they are selling pieces off from the sounds of it. I mean, even Courtland Sutton might be up for grabs for a team that needs a wide receiver. So, if a player like Courtland Sutton is, obviously, you have a guy like Jonathan Cooper, he's rotation edge rusher. He's performed fine this year. He's already got 5.5 sacks. He's technically the starter, but he would be a rotation guy in Philadelphia. Somebody who I think that you can kind of keep everybody fresh, plays that outside linebacker role, with a hand in the dirt that Philadelphia kind of needs in that rotation. And he's a guy who I think could really contribute to that group and expand their ability, without necessarily stepping on anybody's toes. If you're talking about a little bit more interior, the guy that I'm a little bit curious about, and this is somebody who I don't think would cost an extremely large amount of money, in terms of picks or things of that nature. Calais Campbell out of Miami, right? So the Dolphins, they're in their minds likely the season's turning around, right? They're 2-5, but they just got Tua back. Well, let's see what happens, right? Well, they also are 2-5. I think it's a very strong possibility that after this Sunday, when they play the Buffalo Bills, they're going to be 2-6 heading into the deadline, right? You have an expiring contract and a guy like Calais Campbell who won't affect your comp pick formula because he's 38 years old. And who's going to be signing him to a big deal after this season, right? So you don't have to worry about that if you're the Miami Dolphins. Sell off a guy who he's expiring. He's not necessarily going to make or break whether or not you come back in the season. That's a move that if I'm the Miami Dolphins, would consider making, right? So you talk about the Philadelphia Eagles angle, being able to bolster that interior. And I love what we've seen from Jalen Carter. I love what we've seen from Thomas Booker. I love what we've seen, as well from Milton Williams and Moro Ojomo, right? So those guys have all been great. Philadelphia could use some experience on that internal three, right? Guys who can, again, continue to help cultivate guys like Jalen Carter, guys like Jordan Davis, who I think is improved over the past few weeks, but again, still has a long way to go. And then, as much as we've loved Thomas Booker and Moro Ojomo, inexperienced guys once again. So to kind of come in and play, call it what you will, kind of that hybrid Fletcher Cox and Ndamukong Suh role, whatever you want to call it. Calais Campbell, I think, is a guy who can do that. Unfortunately, he's not available on the open market like Suh was, but he's a guy that you can probably have for relatively cheap, who can move a bit around on that defensive line and wreak a little bit of havoc for you too.
Can I just throw a possibility in there? Do you just bite the bullet and get Micah Parsons and Midnight Green? He wants to be here. He doesn't want to be in Dallas. He's not happy in Dallas.
If Jerry ever would, I absolutely would.
That is the first stipulation. But what would it cost to get out Micah Parsons? So let's play devil's advocate.
From Jerry, 4 firsts.
You give him the first. If it costs the first and another pick this year, I feel like you give it to him, and he wants to be here. I mean, watch any of his podcasts. He wants to be in Philly. He doesn't he publicly spoke out about the defense he's currently playing in. I don't think he's happy there. The Cowboys are a train wreck. They're going to blow that whole thing up. It's going to happen. It just feels like a move that Howie Roseman might be able to make happen.
Have the Cowboys and Eagles ever made a trade?
There was one, I think, somewhat recently, wasn't there?
I know they traded the picks, right? Because we traded with them to get Devontae Smith over the Giants.
And then there was also the trade for, who was it, Tyler Lindenbaum, who we traded the pick that ended up being him to, not Tyler somebody, offensive lineman.
Picks, yes, but have we ever actually traded a player to them?
That is a good question. I will research that a little bit.
Because I mean, we know that we've stolen from the Giants, right? Like we Saquon Barkley, he's a freaking Eagle now. But outside of that, I mean,
Tyler Biadasz.
Who?
Tyler Biadasz was the offensive lineman center out of Wisconsin that we traded that pick to. It's still a pick. It doesn't count, but
I mean, I would be for that kind of trade. Like, getting a Micah Parsons here. Like, how do you not say that this defense or this roster is complete with a guy like Micah Parsons? And you pay him top dollar and keep him here.
Yeah, I mean, listen, in theory, I think it works great, but I don't see Jerry ever being willing to do that. And if they're like, of all the very, very stubborn people that are in the NFL, no person is more stubborn than Jerry Jones. So
James Bradbury in a sixth, man. Let's get it done.
Where is he?
I'll sign up on that.
Come on, man. That's
where is James Bradbury nowadays?
As a Cowboy, if I've ever seen one, man. Get it done.
Oh wow, Freddie Freeman, another home run. It sounds like the Yankees might be going down tonight.
That's 6 in a row. That's like an all-time World Series record, I think.
Yep,
six World Series games in a row for him.
It's a record, yeah, 6 straight. So we covered the offense, we covered the defense, we covered trade possibilities. What are your final thoughts going into this weekend against the Jaguars? Obviously, we'll preview that game on Saturday, but taking what you've seen from the Giants games, the Browns game, the Bengals game, what do you feel like the Eagles are looking like going into the rest of the season?
I feel a little bad for him, but I feel like this might be the game that gets Dougie P. That
Don't say it.
You know
Don't say it. No.
From, Eagles legend, Philly legend, but I feel like it's just gonna be so once like you're already clicking. You're going into this game. I don't feel like the Jaguars really have that much going on for them. I think this might be the one. You feel bad for them because they already did it once to them, but they might do it again, man. I feel bad.
Okay. And what do you think, Zach?
I think I agree with Morgan. And when you're talking about Doug Peterson getting fired, like, listen, we've already reached the point where you're getting him without a filter at the podium. So those days are coming. He recently had an opportunity to kind of pump up his quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, who I don't think many people, are looking for that opportunity, except for an impressive drive he did have without his top 3 receivers this past Sunday. So he had that opportunity, and he chose instead to praise everyone else on the team but him. So considering that, I think that there is a clear disconnect on the team, and I think that Doug is going to be moving on at some point, whether they let him play out the season. Honestly, if you're the Jaguars, give Doug the season. Who cares? You're not doing anything this year. You're not doing anything next year. Honestly, you should trade Trevor Lawrence because I think he is terrible as a quarterback, and I just don't think that he's ever going to be able to lead a team, to a successful playoff appearance, let alone to a Super Bowl. So, if you're the Jacksonville, you just gotta, just move to England already. Like, you got nothing else.
An interesting tidbit about Doug Peterson, which I learned today, with Nick on. Sorry, I have a puppy and she doesn't know how to stay still. With Nick on WIP, right? Doug Peterson, after getting fired by the Eagles, and then Nick Sirianni getting hired by the Eagles, Peterson actually helped transition Sirianni into being the Eagles head coach. He kind of gave him the spiel of, a breakdown of all the players, actually. And I feel like that speaks volumes of who Doug Peterson was and is. It does suck that it didn't work in Philly. For some odd reason, the Eagles like to move on from their head coaches so quickly. But I just feel like that speaks volumes to the character of who he is. And it would suck to see him go. But whatever happened to Trevor Lawrence? Wasn't he like the second coming of of the great quarterbacks coming out of college?
He went to Jacksonville. That's what happened, Brian.
That about sums it up.
Yeah, he went to Jacksonville.
All right, fair. That's
do we know what's going on with Dallas? Dallas gonna be back this week? Do you know how likely that is?
I don't know.
Who cares? We got Calcaterra, man. That's the future.
Calcaterra's been cooking, man.
I'm a little mad because Calcaterra coming alive means that they're not going to be getting the Penn State tight end in the draft this year, which I was pretty dead set on. So
his blocking still frustrates me. I get that he's gotten better.
But that's why you have to find a way. I believe they're looking into. Just don't quote me on this. This is a rumor that I heard. Splicing together him and Jack Stoll. So that hopefully you can create a complete tight end movement.
It is the week for it, man. Halloween experiments,
Yeah.
Stitching together.
It is in Canada, right? Did we clarify that it is Halloween in Canada as well? Okay.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So bring them up here. We'll get it done for you. Our medicine's free, right? So We'll get it
See, now you're talking.
done. Get a hold of me. Get a hold of me, Howie.
Probably not to
Make it
win
happen,
3 or 4
man.
seasons, but we'll see.
Yeah. He'll be on IR for the next 3 to 7 years, but we'll get it done, man.
I mean, isn't Goddard's contract coming up at the end of the season as well? Like this is kind of like make or
Yeah,
break.
I don't think he's back.
Yeah, okay.
I feel like he's what takes the team over the top for this year, though. Like you've seen it again. You talked about different pieces kind of making it work. Like if they're able to get that Dallas Goedert that was showing before he got injured, along with the rest of the offense starting to click, like you don't worry so much about getting Jahan Dotson involved in this offense if Dallas Goedert's healthy and he's doing what he's doing. Like that's your third receiver, in my opinion. But yeah, I think you guys are right. I don't know if he's back, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting game. I mean, it feels like a bit of a trap game with Jacksonville losing all their wide receivers, trading away their left tackle. There's just a lot going on over there. But it is Kelly Green week, so everybody make sure you sport your Kelly Greens. I will actually be in the press box again this week for the home game, so I'll be enjoying that one. And then Saturday morning we will be previewing the Eagles Jaguars. And yeah, I mean, I hope you guys enjoy the show today. Everybody that's in the comment section, whether you're on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook, please head over to YouTube. Definitely give us a thumbs up, comment whatever you like, and then let's keep this thing going. I mean, yeah. I mean, any final thoughts?
I would just like to echo Van Summerin, man. He's been fantastic. Toss up that comment. That's Duck Scotty, man. That's a great comment. You can't say enough good about him, man. Those are the kind of football moves where you get a guy like that playing fullback. That's a playoff move right there. You get those kind of guys contributing, all those gears turning together, man. That's what makes a championship team right there. Guys that are.
He's the reason that Saquon broke off that big run against the Giants.
100%. And who would we'd be sitting here in the offseason thinking about like how he's gonna make an impact on this team? 0%, right? Those are the kind of things. I don't even know if there's any fantasy teams with blocking on it, but those are the kind of guys that win you fantasy championships, if that counts. Like it's the same thing, right? In football, guys that are on the roster that are special teams guys. Now all of a sudden he's breaking big runs for Saquon Barkley. Like that's a big deal. And
it just speaks volumes to I don't know. I mean, obviously we know what happened, right? Sirianni was being buried, and the week after that, Hurts was being buried, and now you have this team rallying together to make sure that not only do they save their quarterback, but they save their head coach, and they saved honestly the entire team. Like everybody's buying into the culture to the point where you have a linebacker willing to play a fullback role. Like everybody's willing to do anything to make sure that this team is winning above all else, and it's scary for the rest of the league. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah, we'll see if Hopkins will play a fullback for the Chiefs or something. I don't know.
I highly doubt that.
We'll see, man. He's not playing well at receiver, so might as well.
Damn.
Just saying, my fantasy team is struggling, man. Give me spell. Give me spell.
Oh God. But yeah, I mean, listen, we appreciate you all joining the show today. Be sure to like our video on YouTube. If you're on Twitter, be sure to retweet this, like it, whatever you can, whatever you want to do. Facebook, I'll be honest, I haven't been on Facebook in years, so whatever the nice like button is on there, just like it. But we appreciate you all for joining us. We'll be live on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. to preview the Eagles Jaguars. And until then, I'm Brian Cameron alongside Zach Chavalella, Morgan Burkett, and we're flipping the birds.
Go Birds.
Yes, sir.
Any minute now.
It's not kicking in. But anyways, we'll see you guys.
Flip.